Good afternoon. My name is Priscilla Rojas, and I am the chairwoman of the Boston Planning and Development Agency. First, before we start the meeting, I would like to welcome a new board member, Ms. Kate Bennett, who brings a wealth of experience, and we're just really excited to have her. So let's begin the meeting. Thank you for joining the December 7th, 2023 Boston Redevelopment Authority Board meeting. At this time, the Boston Planning and Development Agency is continuing to host public meetings in a virtual setting for the health, safety, and accessibility of Boston residents. For more information and updates, visit bostonplans.org. The Open Public Meeting Law requires that I notify the public that this meeting is being recorded. Please be aware that an audio and visual recording of this meeting is being made and broadcast by Boston City TV, which is a part of the City of Boston Office of Cable Communications, at Xfinity Channel 26, RCN Channel 13, and Verizon Fios Channel 962. It is also being live streamed at boston.gov/cable. To begin the meeting, I will take a roll call of the members. Ms. Bennett.
Here.
Dr. Landsmark.
Here.
Mr. Shepherd.
Here.
And I'm Priscilla Rojas, I'm here. Okay, let's go to agenda.
Madam Chair, before we start agenda item 1, Councillor Flynn is here.
Oh, cool.
And I think he wanted to speak on this item.
Great. Councillor Flynn, the floor is yours.
He hasn't.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. Thank you to the board. Thank you to the chair. I'm honored to be here representing my constituents. This project will serve the community as a center for education about the Holocaust. It will breathe life into the downtown community in the coming years. During this critical time when we see anti-Semitism rising here in Boston and across the country, this museum, this educational center will play a critical role in hopefully bringing people together, learning about the Holocaust, studying it, and hopefully learning the lessons about hate that exists in the world. But I support this project. I know my colleagues do as well, and this will be an incredible accomplishment, having this center, this educational center in the heart of Boston where we can study, learn, and bring our city together, especially during these difficult, challenging times that we're seeing. So honored to be here and speaking in favor of the Holocaust Museum Educational Center at 125 Tremont Street. Thank you for giving me a few minutes to speak before you. Thank you for your commitment to the residents of Boston.
Great. Thank you so much, Councillor Flynn.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Cheers. Happy holidays.
You too.
All right. Item number 1. Request authorization to issue a certification of approval pursuant to Article 80E Small Project Review of the Zoning Code for the proposed construction of the Holocaust Museum located at 125 Tremont Street and to take all related actions. Scott.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board, Secretary Bohemus, and Director Jemison. My name is Scott Greenhall, and I'm a project manager with Development Review. The proposed project before you is an Article 80 small project located at 125 Tremont Street in downtown. The proposed project comprises the demolition of the existing structure occupying the project site and the construction of an approximately 32,696 gross square foot building that will serve as a first of its kind Holocaust Museum and Educational Center in Boston. On June 5th, 2023, the BPDA received a small project review application from the proponent. The BPDA hosted a virtual public meeting on July 11th. The public meeting was advertised in the local newspapers, and the notice was posted on the BPDA's calendar. The comment period ended July 20th. The proposed project was approved by the Boston Civic Design Commission, or BCDC, on October 3rd. I will now turn it over to Eileen Michaud to cover the planning context before the development team begins their presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Good afternoon, Chair Rojas, Secretary Bohemus, members of the board, and Director Jemison. My name is Eileen Michaud, and I'm the BPDA Zoning Compliance Planner assigned to this project. Next slide, please. The proposed project at 125 Tremont Street is located within Article 38, the Midtown Cultural District, and is overlaid by the Boston Common and Public Garden Protection Area. Located across Tremont Street from the Boston Common, the project site is also within the jurisdiction of Parks Commission review. The project site is also located within the planning boundaries of Plan Downtown, released as a final draft in August 2023. Next slide, please. The project site is within a designated enhanced area within the ladder blocks, identified on the map to the left, which is intended to activate the area with publicly accessible ground floors while affirming the distinct historic and cultural identity of the ladder blocks. By redeveloping an inactive corner with a new museum and educational programming along the Freedom Trail, the proposed project contributes to the cultural resources within and surrounding the ladder blocks. The project site integrates much-needed public realm enhancements in an area of high pedestrian traffic and limited sidewalk space, with a new outdoor gathering space on Hamilton Place, public art built into the facade, and new safety elements to protect pedestrians and museum patrons from traffic. Next slide, please. By way of summary, the proposed project complies with the maximum zoning height for this area of 125 feet and the maximum FAR of 8.0, and advances the use, massing, and public realm draft recommendations of Plan Downtown. After board approval, the proposed project does not anticipate zoning relief, but will continue design review at the BPDA. Thank you, and I will now turn it over to the project team to present their project.
Thank you, Eileen. Thank you, Scott. Hello, Madam Chair, Madam Secretary, members of the board, Mr. Director. Congratulations and welcome, Member Bennett. My name is Mike Ross. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Prince Lobel. I'm joined here by my clients, the Holocaust Legacy Foundation's president and co-founder, Jody Kipnis, as well as co-founder Todd Ruderman. Additionally, I'm accompanied by John Traficante and Stuart Marshall from Schwartz Silver Architects, who will be presenting this essential project for our city. Next slide, please. As the son of New England Holocaust Memorial's founder and survivor, Steve Ross, along with my sister and co-counsel, attorney Julie Ross, it's an immense personal and professional honor to address you today about such a crucial endeavor during this pivotal period. The forthcoming Holocaust Museum and Education Center, to be situated at 125 Tremont Street, adjacent to the Freedom Trail, facing the State House, will stand as a vital hub for cultural enlightenment. Its location in the heart of downtown will provide a space for learning and introspection, allowing visitors to delve into the profound lessons stemming from humanity's most egregious atrocities. In a time where anti-Semitism in the United States has surged by 400% and where Massachusetts ranks fourth in all hate crimes, this museum takes on an urgent relevance. Its mission will transcend boundaries, welcoming individuals of all faiths, engaging students and visitors with the understanding of the importance of confronting injustice, advocating for human rights, and building a more compassionate world. This museum and education center will be a place for learning and a place for hope. On behalf of my clients, I'd like to extend our deepest gratitude to the City of Boston for Council President Flynn's recent comments and for your support and contributions to this vital initiative thus far. I'll be available for questions after. At this point, I'd like to advance the slide and turn it over to Stuart and John for additional comments, our architects.
Thank you, everyone. John Traficante, I'm a design principal at Schwartz Silver Architects, and I'm joined here today by Stuart Marshall. Stuart's the senior associate and the project manager for this project. As you can see in the plans, and I'll walk through the plan some of our slides here. As you can see in the plans, the site is a tremendous site located at the corner of the Boston Common, across the street from the Freedom Trail, actually along the Freedom Trail, and then down the street from the State House. It's the proposed new museum and education center will replace a 1955 bank building that had offices above and was most recently used at the street level as a 7-Eleven store. Next slide, please. These are a couple other views. Again, a view on the left is on Tremont Street with, you can see how close the T head house is to the building. Public transportation is immediately outside the door of the building, so it's a perfect place for a new public museum and education center. And then the view on the right is looking down Hamilton Place towards Spark Street Church, rather blank facade of the existing 1955 building that we're replacing. Next slide, please. At a kind of zoomed out level, we are proposing bus drop-off and visitor drop-off along Park Street, headed up toward the State House. From there, there's easy access on a public sidewalk and a public crossing at Tremont Street, which will provide views directly into the new lobby of the museum. And then at the corner is the entrance to the building. We're also providing new visitor bike parking along Tremont Street next to the T head house further to the southeast. Next slide. And if we kind of zoom in a little more, just a couple of things to point out. It was mentioned that we're opening up the corner of the site along Hamilton and Tremont Street to make it more public. We're pulling back from the corner so that it provides a gathering place for people entering and exiting the building. We're also angling that front glass entry facade so that it really addresses the more public Tremont Street entrance. So it's visible and open and visible to the public from Tremont Street. Additionally, we're widening the sidewalk along Hamilton to provide a public place to possibly queue, and adding stainless steel bollards around the edges to protect and create a safe place along the new sidewalks outside the building. The gray area is extending the granite paving from the interior lobby to the outside, acting as a welcome mat to the new museum. I think we can move on from here. Next slide. The building, this is the Tremont Street elevation. The building is organized traditionally with a base on middle and a top. The base of the building is constructed of glass and white granite, which the glass offers views into the public lobby, and we'll have a digital screen behind the desk, which will be visible from the sidewalk. So, looking to engage passerbys. The white granite will be engraved, and also a way of engaging people as they walk past the building. The middle of the building, where the exhibits are really housed behind that center portion of the building, is clad in a white glass, spandrel glass, so it's reflective. We don't want a lot of windows in those exhibits, so we're providing material that is a beautiful material but isn't transparent, but is a little reflective. And we're wrapping that with a stainless steel curtain. The stainless steel curtain is symbolic of many of the Jewish households during the Third Reich rise to power, where the families pulled their curtains closed, either to protect and hide within their homes, or in some instances they kind of drew the curtains open in a sign of resistance or to reveal something from within. We're doing something similar with the exhibits, where we're pulling that stainless steel curtain at the exterior back to reveal the rail car, which would be visible from the outside, and kind of engage the public that way. The top of the building is dedicated mostly to the public space, event space, and classroom space up at the top of the building. And that is a glassy front along Tremont Street, with views out to the Common, up to the State House, and down Tremont Street toward the direction of City Hall. So it really is really taking advantage of that position along Tremont Street. Next slide. So this is the elevation of the Hamilton Place elevation, and again, similar attitude basement on top where the base is white granite and glass. The glass at the corner is really open and inviting to people to enter. The middle, again, wrapped in the stainless with the corner, with the stainless steel curtain pulled back at the corner bay window, and then the events and classroom spaces up at the top. Next, please. This is just an axon section, the sectional axon, showing kind of how the building is programmed. Again, public space at the first floor, a lobby, a gallery space, accessible to the public. And then the center of the building at the upper floors are the permanent exhibits as you move through the building. And again, all open to the public. And then event space up at the top level. And you can see in this, as we pulled back from the corner, the added area underneath the building, kind of at that protected building entry, which enhances the public space. Next, please. And then I'm just going to share a few perspective views. This is a view of the building looking toward the Common from Tremont Street, Park Street on the right, and views, Park Street on the right and views down to the Common. Next, please. In the evening, we're intending to light the curtain from the top and the bottom so that it never goes dark at night but has a warm glow. Again, the corner entry and access to the public lobby. Next, please. And a few images of the building, a few perspectives in context. The one in the upper left looking down Park Street toward the building from the State House, and then a couple of views from the Boston Common. Next, and final slide. This is just showing how the corner being pulled back not only kind of makes it a more public corner, but actually opens up Hamilton Street and makes Hamilton Street more public as well. Views through this corner out to the Common and the openness of that new entrance space. Next, I think this is the last slide. Yes, thank you, Evan. Any questions?
Thank you for your presentation. Any questions or comments from the board? Okay, hearing and seeing none, a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call for a vote. Ms. Bennett?
Yes.
Dr. Landsmark?
Aye.
Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 2. Request authorization to issue a preliminary adequacy determination waiving further review pursuant to Article 80B Large Project Review of the Zoning Code for the proposed construction of 211 rental units and 18 home ownership units, including 38 IDP rental units and 3 IDP home ownership units, a 43,459 square foot grocery store, 7,295 square feet of retail space, 275 car parking spaces, 229 bicycle parking spaces, and 19 blue bicycle parking spaces located at 15 Washington Street, and to take all related actions. Michael.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board, Secretary Polimas, and Director Jemison. For the record, I am Michael Sinatra, Developer Review Ombudsman with the BPDA. The project before you is 15 Washington Street in Brighton. The existing site contains a Whole Foods supermarket and is approximately 2.3 acres. The proposed project will contain 229 units, 18 of which will be home ownership townhomes, and 17.9% of the total will be designated as IDP, which is 38 rental and 3 home ownership, totaling approximately 464,000 gross floor area square feet, and a brand new Whole Foods totaling approximately 43,459 square feet, and additional retail totaling 7,295 square feet for a total of 341,911 square feet. And that includes some at-grade and above-grade parking of 79,000 square feet. FAR is 3.43. The proposed height will be 85 feet. The project will also contain parking for 275 spaces, which will be shared amongst the residents of the building and the Whole Foods customers, as well as 229 bike parking spaces. The total development cost will be $110 million. All of these changes to the project that took place between the PNF and the DPIR will reflect the proponent's willingness to listen to the community in order to build a better project. The process has been robust and has taken place over several years due to the pandemic. The PNF was filed originally in 2018, and we are here tonight seeking your Article 80B large project review approval. As a result of the lengthy community process, the following are some significant mitigation highlights. The project will be designed in a way that would allow the current Whole Foods to remain operating until the new supermarket is ready to open. The site also includes a pocket park, envisioned as a new landscape plaza on the ground floor leading into the entrance to the Whole Foods. The project will also include significant enhancements to the streetscape and pedestrian safety in the form of protected bike lanes, consolidated driveways, a left turn lane on Corey Road, protected and safer pedestrian crossings, and a new bus stop. The proponent will also donate $175,000 to the Parks Department for improvements to Overlook Park as an added benefit to create more open space in the neighborhood. At this time, I will turn it over to Ben Zunkler and the BPDA Planning Department to quickly present the planning context slides, and then to the development team to present their slide deck, after which we would be happy to take any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Next slide, please. Good afternoon, Chairwoman Rojas, Madam Secretary, members of the board, and Director Jemison. As Michael mentioned, I'm Ben Zunkler, a senior planner at the BPDA, focused on Allston and Brighton. The proposed project sits within the Allston-Brighton neighborhood shopping subdistrict and requires zoning relief, which the proponent plans to seek from the Zoning Board of Appeal. In BPDA staff review, we considered zoning, the Allston-Brighton mobility plan, citywide goals, surrounding context, and preliminary findings developed as part of the Allston-Brighton needs assessment process. Next slide, please. The proposed project, situated along Washington Street, approximately 500 feet from Commonwealth Avenue, between Corey Hill and Brookline and the Aberdeen Architectural Conservation District at Brighton, exceeds density and height regulations, but retains the existing grocery store, a community asset. It contributes significantly to housing goals and enhances the public realm. In particular, it aligns with Housing a Changing City, Boston 2030, addressing housing access and affordability concerns, and supports the Allston-Brighton mobility plan, improving transportation modes. Throughout the BPDA staff review, the project evolved to address safety, transportation, street trees, open space accessibility, and building design, aligning with citywide climate and resiliency goals. After your review, the project will move to the Zoning Board of Appeal for relief on elements exceeding regulations. Any questions from the board are welcome. I'll now hand it over to the proponent team. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon to the chair and members of the board. I'm Nick Brown from Kimco. I'm joined today by David Manfredi, our architect from Elkis Manfredi, as well as we have a number of additional team members on hand, various disciplines, who can answer any questions that may arise after our presentation. So first of all, thank you to the board and to the BPDA and city staff, as well as all the local stakeholders who participated in the public process and bringing the project to the point that we are today. Before jumping in, I thought it might be helpful just to give a very quick overview of Kimco, who we are and what it is that we do. Kimco has been in business for over 60 years. We're the nation's largest publicly traded owner and operator of shopping centers and mixed-use properties. And a significant part of our development platform involves exactly what we're proposing here in this project, which is taking existing underutilized retail sites and transforming them into a mix of housing and retail, and doing that in a manner that's consistent with the surrounding context and responsive to community feedback. This particular site is one that we've owned for nearly 10 years, and we've always viewed it as having great potential for transformation and improvement. First, it's obviously in a fantastic location. It's proximate to multiple modes of public transportation. The site has been identified by the MAPC as being favorable for multifamily development, and essentially it's a site that has an existing Whole Foods market, and that store is it's grossly undersized for the needs of the grocer in order to operate efficiently. That creates a risk for them to leave the community, and that's an issue that we are keenly aware of at Kimco. being that we are one of Whole Foods' largest landlords. So that's something that we always keep an eye on to make sure that they can operate successfully. The site itself has just a large parking field. It lacks an engaging streetscape along all of its 3 frontages. It has a building that is dated and architecturally unappealing. And so when we viewed the site, we really saw an opportunity here to create some much needed housing, including rental and home ownership, and also affordable housing within both of those housing types. The project is also proposing here to build a new state-of-the-art Whole Foods store, the community, and ensure that grocer is able to stay at this location for the long term. And in the process, we're proposing to create some substantial open space, improvements along the public realm, and to provide safety enhancements from a traffic, bicycle, and pedestrian standpoint. The project itself has a lengthy history that dates back actually to 2018. Since that time, and that includes a pause for the pandemic, but we've worked very closely with all the stakeholders, trying to listen to their concerns and improve the project in response to those. It is one that we are incredibly excited about. We think it's going to have a strong positive impact on the community. And this afternoon, we're hopeful to earn your support and bring this project one step closer to fruition. So with that, I will hand it off to David Manfredi, who can walk you through the project.
Chairwoman Rojas, Secretary Bohemus, Chief Jameson, members of the board, good afternoon. You can go to the next slide, please. This is a project, as Nick has just said, and as Mr. Sinatra said, that has evolved and benefited from a lot of interaction with the IAG, with the neighborhood, with BPDA, and with BCDC. It is located at Washington Street and Corey Road. The site is 2.3 acres, and you can see almost at the city line of Boston and Brookline. Next, please. Bounded by Washington Street, Corey Road, Alston, and the interior property line, you can, as Nick just described, you can see the Whole Foods store and a lot of surface parking and a number of curb cuts. Our immediate neighbors include Patricia White and Covenant House housing development, as well as the Brighton House and condominiums to the north. If you go, and I wanted to mention, you can also see, because this photograph is a little bit older, new development, not part of anything that this team has been doing, but 5 Washington on the opposite side of Corey Road. You go to the next. The proposal is divided into 2 parts in order to maintain continuous operation of the Whole Foods, so that a new Whole Foods can be built to the west with all of its housing above and its parking, and then the old Whole Foods can be demolished and the remainder of the site can be built out. As Nick pointed out, the Whole Foods will be expanded. All parking will be internal, and all the units will be built in these 2 buildings above grade with heights of 4 to 7 floors. In addition, as Nick pointed out, there's a significant amount of public realm improvements, new open space, and widened sidewalks on Curry Road, on Alston, and significant improvements on Washington Street. Next, please. You can see here all of the public realm surrounding the site and the footprint of the building. On Washington Street, the sidewalk from curb to building face is approximately 30 feet. On Corey Road, it's been expanded to 14 feet. On Alston, it's been expanded to 12'6". You can also see a 7,000 square foot new open space on that southwest corner, which is also the front door to Whole Foods, and located across from the crosswalk from those housing projects directly south, in order to accommodate the users in those buildings, the guests, the customers from those buildings, to accommodate the easiest and shortest possible walking distance from their homes to the Whole Foods. The other thing you can see here, besides the improvements that create that park, you can also see that the complete street includes a new cycle track that will extend east and all the way west to Commonwealth Avenue. And there are only all of those old curb cuts will be replaced by only 2 curb cuts on the entire perimeter of the site. Next, please. As you can see, the block will be made up of several parts. Stepping from Quarry Road on the right at 5 stories to 6 stories, and then dropping down to 2 stories, and then up again to 6, 7, and back down to 4, obviously making accommodation to the uses on all of our perimeters. And now several perspectives. First, next please, sorry. I'm looking to the west from Washington Street and Quarry Road. You can see again how the building steps from 4 to 5 to 6. It is largely brick. There is some metal panel, but the intent is really to give this the diversity and an assemblage of parts that fits into the scale of the surrounding uses. Next, please. This is the view from the southwest. So this is the new park space, the 7,000 square feet of new publicly accessible park. At the street edge, it is 35 feet tall, and that's the Whole Foods. That's the 40,000 square feet of Whole Foods. It enters at grade and then goes up to the Whole Foods on the 2nd floor. And so the Whole Foods can spill out into that open space, accommodate seating outside, or seating is available, publicly accessible for all. If you go to the next, you're now looking into the open space. We've crossed Washington Street. There you can see there's a change in grade, and so kind of a sloped outdoor space that brings you to the front door of the new Whole Foods. You go to the next, now we're looking west from the cafe and the retail space across that new open space. That's Whole Foods to the right and Washington Street immediately to the left. And that concludes our presentation. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Great, thank you so much. Do we have any questions or comments from the board? It's good, okay. Hearing and seeing none, motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call for a vote. Ms. Bennett?
Aye.
Mr. Landsmark?
Aye.
Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Congratulations and good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers. Okay, item number 3, we have to take off the table. This board action for the New Market 21st Century Industrial District, which was scheduled to be held on October 12th, 2023. I move and the board voted to table the proposed actions for further consideration. And so at this time, I would like to take from the table the proposed actions for consideration. Motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call for a vote. Ms. Bennett?
Aye.
Dr. Landsberg?
Aye.
Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. So that item is no longer tabled and is on, here we go, agenda item number 3. Request authorization to petition the Zoning Commission to adopt text amendments to Articles 90 and 2 of the Zoning Code and to amend zoning maps 6A, B, C, and E to consolidate and simplify the code and create 3 new industrial subdistricts and to redraw district boundaries in maps 6A, B, C, and E and establish a New Market 21st Century Industrial District to move currently industrial areas on map 6A, B, C to map 6E to implement zoning recommendations from Plan New Market, the 21st Century Economy Initiative, and to take all related actions. Jack.
Good afternoon, Chair Rojas, members of the board, Chief Jemison, and Secretary Polimas. My name is Jack Halverson, and I'm a planner with the Zoning Reform Team, and I'm here today to present on the zoning implementation resulting from Plan New Market, which was adopted by this board on August 17th. It's great to be back before you all to present the zoning amendment again, and I look forward to hearing any further questions or comments you might have today. As a reminder, the plan originated in Imagine Boston 2030, which identified New Market as a vital industrial area of Boston that should have its key industrial uses preserved and enhanced. This zoning is an update to the existing land uses in the New Market area to affirm its importance and reflect how modern industrial uses can be regulated in the zoning code. Next slide, please. So the BPDA took this directive from Imagine Boston 2030 to begin planning for the industrial area and defining what a 21st century industrial neighborhood looks like. As defined in the plan, and after 4 years of engagement with stakeholders and community members, 21st century industry in New Market maintains both traditional industrial and arts uses while welcoming in compatible and supportive commercial uses. Next. Here's a recap of the public engagement for the planning process that started before the pandemic and continued through this year. There were over 25 public meetings, including open houses, chats with the planner, advisory group meetings, and workshops in the area. And planning staff also facilitated 8 additional office hour sessions, in addition to what you see on the screen here. Next. The draft zoning amendment was released on August 17th, the same day the plan was adopted by this board, followed by a 6-week public comment period, which included a public meeting. And we originally brought the zoning amendment before this board on October 12th, but was tabled after a request came from Congressman Lynch for a briefing on these zoning changes. Since the board meeting on October 12th, senior BPDA leadership met with Congressman Lynch, Senator Collins, and Councilor Flynn to discuss the proposed zoning changes and how the city is approaching industrial areas, not just for New Market, but in other parts of the city as well. Next slide. So the adopted plan had specific zoning recommendations for 3 new subdistricts, including building heights, land uses, and setbacks to allow for street tree planting. We've taken this directive from the plan to propose an update to the New Market Article 90 in the zoning code. And I also want to note on this slide with the map here that the original planning process started by looking at a broader area, extending further to the east near South Bay and beyond. And early in the planning process, it was identified that those areas would be appropriate for the continuation of residential uses, and that the focus for industrial zoning should be in the places that you see highlighted here, where they exist largely today. Next. So the proposed zoning changes include mapping 3 new subdistricts and amending the boundary for Article 90's jurisdiction, creating new industrial land use categories, and reorganizing the use table, establishing a new dimensional table, removing FAR as a regulating metric, and several other miscellaneous provisions that I'll go through. Next. So here's the existing zoning map for the New Market Industrial Commercial Neighborhood District, which is regulated by Article 90. Next. And the planned New Market study area extends beyond the boundary of Article 90 to the south and includes part of an industrial subdistrict called the New Market Industrial Development Area within the Greater Roxbury neighborhood of Article 50. Next slide. So our proposal is to redraw the district boundary for Article 90 and move it into this industrial area of Article 50 and rename this entire district as the New Market 21st Century Industrial District. As it relates to our zoning reform more broadly, the goal here is really to regulate the same districts in the same place of the code. Next. So the shaded area here is what's moved from Article 50 to Article 90. You'll see that there is a little small island of a residential subdistrict that will remain in Article 50. A core planning principle, again, of Plan New Market was to ensure that residential uses, which aren't really compatible with those industrial uses, remain outside of the district boundary, and that residential use is not allowed in any New Market subdistricts. So this residential island will remain in Article 50, and we're not proposing any changes for residential subdistricts within Article 50. Next. And this is the proposed Article 50 zoning map. And again, you can see this amended boundary with the little residential island called out there. Next. So now I'll go through the proposed subdistricts, which include core industrial, gateway industrial, and creative industrial. Next slide. So the core industrial subdistrict really retains traditional industrial uses while allowing for some expansion of lab, office, and R&D, and smaller commercial storefronts that support the industrial uses. Height maximums here are proposed to be 5 stories and 95 feet. And again, throughout Newmarket, no residential uses are allowed. Next. The Gateway Industrial Subdistrict is a transitional area with height maximums of 8 stories and 140 feet. A key aspect of the Gateway is a requirement for at least 15% of the building being used for industrial uses or workforce training. Next slide. And for the creative industrial, the heights are proposed to be lower at 5 stories and 65 feet, with only light and creative industrial uses allowed. The existing zoning in this area has produced some smaller scale industrial buildings that really could be rehabbed and reused. And several properties already have creative industrial and light manufacturing uses today. Next slide. So in order to more clearly assign industrial uses to each of these subdistricts, we're proposing 3 explicit industrial use categories, which are light industrial, heavy industrial, and creative and arts industrial. This creative and arts industrial is a new category that incorporates some more traditional artist uses along with other emerging creative uses that you see actually in Newmarket today. Next slide. We've also added in uses that are not currently allowed in Newmarket, but they do exist there today, like elementary and secondary schools and public services. Next slide. And another set of changes is simplifying and reorganizing the use table in Article 90 by alphabetizing the uses and consolidating duplicate footnotes. Next slide. So now I'm going to go into the uses for each of the subdistricts. This is the core industrial subdistrict. So the zoning here distinguishes between uses on the first and second floors and the upper floors. Traditional light and heavy industrial uses and trade schools are allowed on those first and second floors, along with creative industrial and more highly trafficked commercial uses like restaurants. Those are allowed also in the first 2 floors as long as they don't occupy more than 25% of the square footage. And so this is really to maintain the existing industrial nature of the subdistrict and prioritize the higher intensity uses. And lab and office space would then be allowed on those upper floors. Next slide. For the gateway, all of these uses will be allowed in some capacity except for residential. Again, there's this provision of at least 15% of square footage being light or heavy industrial, trade schools, or creative industrial uses. Next slide. And finally, the creative industrial subdistrict. Here we plan to allow light industrial, trade schools, creative industrial, higher trafficked commercial uses, and lab and office. But heavy industrial and residential uses will be forbidden. Next slide. So now to get into the dimensional table, we're proposing a new table D for dimensional regulations. And the key recommendation from the plan was removing FAR, floor area ratio, as a regulating metric. We're requiring setbacks along Southampton Street and the south side of Magazine Street to accommodate future street tree plantings and improve public realm experience. And for the creative industrial subdistrict, we've actually included a maximum building lot coverage requirement here. And this is unique to the creative industrial subdistrict. We're really trying to provide an opportunity for smaller scale development that matches the built form that's there today, and continue to incentivize reuse of the buildings that are there. Next slide. Minimum ground floor ceiling height is also a new provision for the core and gateway subdistricts, where we want to encourage and maintain industrial uses on the ground floors. For both the core and the gateway, we're requiring a minimum of 21 feet for the ground floor. We're proposing an amendment, therefore, to the existing definition of ground floor ceiling height in Article 2 to include this key phrase of predominant ground floor elevation. And this is because industrial ground floors may have prominent loading docks or other sort of multi-level ground floor interiors that you might need to measure from. So this definition provides some more clarity in that. Next slide. Another change is to align our zoning with the current BTD parking maximum guidance. We've updated the parking minimums to reflect what those BTD regulations are. Next slide. And finally, performance standards are a unique set of regulations for industrial areas. They regulate emissions and contamination from different uses. Performance standards also live as a definition in Article 2. So our new performance standards section in Article 90 now simply references that definition, which is consistent with other articles throughout the code. Next slide. So before we close, I just wanted to mention a couple of written comments that we've received. Some adjacent owners who have property just outside of the study area have expressed wanting to allow residential use in Newmarket. However, from the outset of the planning process, residential uses were really determined to be incompatible with the industrial nature of the area, and allowing residential would be contradictory to the land use goals that were identified in the plan. The Friends of Melnia Cass also asked for provisions to encourage street tree plantings and landscaping. And as I mentioned before, we're requiring setbacks along Southampton Street and Magazine Street for those tree plantings. And the plan also includes urban design guidelines for street trees and landscaping as well. And finally, I also wanted to note that input from the Newmarket Business Improvement District has been extremely instrumental throughout both the planning and zoning processes, and to thank them for connecting us with their stakeholders in the area. Next slide. So thank you for your time this afternoon. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. And Kathleen Onifer, the Deputy Director for Zoning, is also available to help answer some questions.
Great, thank you so much, Jeff. So any questions or comments from the board? Hearing and seeing none, a motion is in order.
So moved. Second.
Roll call for a vote. Ms. Bennett?
Aye.
Mr. Lansmore?
Aye.
Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thanks, everyone, and I appreciate everything you did to kind of go back and tie up some of those loose ends with questions that we had. So again, great plan. Okay, item number 4. Request authorization to petition the Boston Zoning Commission to adopt a text amendment to Article 80B-2.5, waiver of large project review requirements for certain projects to preserve or create affordable housing of the Boston Zoning Code, in connection with the mayor's executive order to streamline approval of affordable housing and to take all related actions. Caitlin.
Madam Chair, members of the board, Director Jemison, and Secretary Polhemus, thank you for your time today. My name is Caitlin Coppinger. I'm the Deputy Director of Comprehensive Planning. Next slide, please. Before we get into the proposed zoning text amendment, I just want to set this framework for tonight's agenda item and why we're proposing this tactical change to the zoning code. On October 6, 2023, Mayor Wu issued the executive order to streamline the approval process for affordable housing projects. In November of 2023, this board adopted that executive order. And for further clarity tonight, when I speak to affordable housing this evening, that is being defined by 60% or more of the units in a project being restricted at or below 100% AMI. That is area median income. The executive order had 5 articles that the city and the agency was tasked with. 1, prioritize the affordable housing in the development review process. All agencies were asked to review current practices and adopt procedures that will prioritize the review of affordable housing projects. The second article was to create a critical path for Article 80 review and approval. The BPDA has been looking at ways to streamline the Article 80 review process to reduce duplicative review for affordable housing projects. The third article was to study and address the zoning challenges to affordable housing development and propose recommendations to the code. The fourth article was to create a system to track affordable housing projects review and approvals across all agencies, and the 5th article was to establish a governance structure for implementation of the order. This group is made up of advocates, affordable housing developers, and city agencies. Next slide, please. So why was this executive order necessary? Boston's in a severe housing crisis, and Given the exponentially rising rents and home prices, we see that half of all renters and 38% of all homeowners are cost burdened, in which they pay more than 30% of their income on housing-related costs, making life unstable for Boston residents. Affordable housing is a critical cornerstone of thriving communities, impacting various facets of individual lives and the overall well-being of society. Beyond being a fundamental need, it directly influences the economic stability by allowing individuals and families to allocate resources to other essentials like healthcare and education. On top of the actual rising cost of rentals and homeownership, the cost to build housing is significantly increasing, and we're seeing the rise of construction, land, and financing rates make it increasingly difficult to build and renovate more affordable housing. The need to evaluate internal processes to create better and more affordable housing is necessary to be able to deliver the results in the wake of today's housing crisis. Next slide, please. During the information gathering stage of the executive order, a recurring concern emerged that regarding existing affordable housing projects of scale and their planned capital improvement projects, which typically involve the following: kitchen and bathroom and flooring upgrades, HVAC system improvements, and exterior and accessibility upgrades. These projects are generally planned far in advance given their capital budget needs, and because of the size of their renovation, often trigger Article 80 large project review through the substantial rehabilitation clause. That says that a renovation project over 50,000 square feet will trigger Article 80 review. As a result, they're required to go through multiple rounds of review by various city agencies for changes that are largely internal to the project and do not create a material change to its actual impacts. This inadvertently prolongs project timelines and increased costs for initiatives that directly benefit the existing affordable housing residents in Boston. Next slide, please. Part of the scope of the order was to examine the processes that the agency has to prioritize affordable housing review. One of the tools that we have is that the current code allows for the waiver of certain affordable housing projects that rehabilitate or construct affordable housing units. There are three current criteria for waiving Article 80 for these projects. One, that the project triggers review by the agency is in a planned development area, a 121A, or an urban renewal area, and that the BPDA determines that there are no adverse impacts outside of lot. And the third one is that the authority determines that the project will increase the availability or quality of affordable housing projects. The one thing that I would like to note here is that the limiting factor here is that the code puts a boundary limitation on projects that are in PDA, urban renewal, and 121A areas. Next slide, please. Going back to the concern of what we heard about existing public housing renovation projects that trigger Article 80, we took a look at which types of projects would qualify for this waiver, and the majority of the existing public affordable housing stock would not actually qualify because they were not built at a time that they were subject to a PDA, 121A, or urban renewal area. So what we're proposing tonight is to strike the PDA, 121A, and urban renewal parcel limitations in this waiver. This means that any qualified affordable housing project that would trigger the review by the agency could be considered for a waiver of Article 80. Next slide, please. So to clarify again, what kind of projects would you actually see this waiver apply to here? One, projects that are 60% or more affordable at or below 100% AMI, projects that do not have adverse impacts outside of the lot as determined by Article 80. Some things that Article 80 outlines as impacts are transportation, environmental, and its site plan. And the third one being that the project will increase the availability of affordable housing and improve the existing quality of the affordable housing stock in the city of Boston. An example of a project that would qualify is the BHA Doris Bundy project that recently went through Article 80 approval. The project is an existing public housing development that was planning kitchen, bathroom, and common area improvements that triggered Article 80 review just due to the sheer size of the project. This is improving the quality of the living conditions for these residents, and if the project were to have received a waiver of Article 80, we could have removed a year from the timeline to get residents into improved conditions. Next slide, please. So what would an actual process look like here? First, the project who thinks that they're qualified will submit an application for a waiver with outlining how the project meets the criteria for a waiver. Second, the BPDA will notify the community through its mailing list that an application for a waiver has been submitted, and then the BPDA will thoroughly review the application for consistency with the code and determine that if a project is eligible or not. The BPDA board will vote on granting a waiver, so anything that we would like to waive Article 80, this board would have to approve. The project would then go through design review with BPDA staff, and a waiver of Article 80 does not mean that any other city department process will be waived. The BPDA only has the authority to waive the regulatory rules that they have within their powers, not any other city agency. So that concludes my presentation tonight, and I hope that I hope to answer any questions that you guys may have, but before we get started, I would like to call on Boston Housing Authority Administrator Kenzie Bach to speak before we get into questions.
Thank you so much, Caitlin, and thank you so much to members of the board. Really appreciate your consideration of this item tonight. I'm slightly bashful to be coming to you live from an office that was until recently Kate Bennett's, but it's lovely to see her here in this role. So I just wanted to speak a little bit more to why this is such an important thing for the Boston Housing Authority. I think many folks on the meeting are aware that this year in January, the mayor announced that the Boston Housing Authority would be going fossil fuel free by 2030. The Boston Housing Authority, for context, we own and operate 10,000 physical public housing units. We pass subsidy through to a number more and serve 17,000 voucher families, but we kind of have 10,000 units that are ours to worry about the physical plant of, and taking those to fossil fuel free by 2030 is the most ambitious goal we think of any housing authority in the country. And it is going to involve a ton of parallel processing. So we are running really hard at that goal. We are figuring out ways that the Housing Authority can use the Inflation Reduction Act incentives and other mechanisms to just do that as quickly as possible. And we're really excited about the prospect of putting public housing residents at the front of the line, not the back, when it comes to decarbonization. That's also really important because decarbonizing our housing stock goes hand in hand with really addressing long-term capital needs. The reality is the things that will make our buildings more energy efficient, which is part of what we have to do along with electrification, they are the things that have too long gone neglected in terms of not having federal funding for new roofs, tighter windows, updated heating systems. In the case of putting in heat pumps, we're going to be giving our residents cooling, like central air, for the first time in most of our developments. So we're excited. I mean, we've got lots of concern about the history of kind of like, if you don't have good ventilation, you've got gas stoves, that can create a real issue. Electrification can deal with that. So we're really excited about the public health and quality of life benefits of these projects. But I would be lying if I didn't say that the scale of what we have to do is enormous. We actually, former Administrator Bennett commissioned, and I now have the pleasure of receiving a kind of portfolio analysis of what it looks like for us, and to do this work across our portfolio is like a $1.2 billion endeavor. So it is a huge project, and we're really grateful that the mayor's been so strongly behind it, not just announcing it, but then giving us $50 million to start this at Mildred Haley. I know the board is familiar with the redevelopment project that's going on half of Mildred Haley, but on the other half of the Mildred Haley site, the BHA is retaining the units. And rather than knocking down buildings and building new ones, what we were doing is embarking on a project where we go one building at a time. On the older part of the Mildred Haley site, we've got these kind of 18-unit buildings, and so we go one building at a time. We don't have to displace very many residents. We can just do like a 4-month kind of intensive strip down of those buildings, new systems, new floors, new kitchens and baths. Residents get to come back to a unit that's like new, but we keep the structure of the building. And although it's expensive, it's much less expensive than knocking them down and building new, and we're able to deliver a lot more of these much more quickly than on a traditional redevelopment timeline. The challenge for the BHA is that, as Caitlin said, even though that doesn't involve any change to building envelopes, it really doesn't, we're not increasing density, it doesn't have these kind of development impacts outside of the site like a normal development project would. Just because the BHA is so big and our sites are so big, it's always going to trigger the Article 80 process. And that's really not something that we can add on top of this process, especially when we're trying to parallel process this all over the city and do it by 2030. So, from our perspective at BHA, there's obviously a clear distinction between the type of redevelopment projects that we're pursuing at Charlestown, Mary Ellen, in South Boston, the other half of Mildred Haley, where you are talking about new density, new street grids, lots of changes. We think that the BPDA's process is really valuable for those projects, and we often gain a lot by going through it. but with these kind of systematic renovation retrofits, the number one thing that my residents are really saying when I go and visit them, as I did at the Mildred Haley annual meeting earlier this month, is that they just want to know how quickly can this happen. And we've got people who, their units are well past kind of, there's lots of components of them that need to be addressed. We're very concerned about the quality. That's why the mayor gave us so much money for it. And I've got folks who go home after they hear we're going to renovate and they start packing their things. And it's our job at the BHA to be able to really deliver on these promises as quickly as possible. So we're here in full-throated support of this amendment tonight. It really is addressed at our particular situation, but our particular situation is the situation of 10,000 of Boston's lowest income families. And we want to be able to improve the housing stock for them as quickly as possible. So really thank you for your consideration, and I'll obviously also be staying on for any questions.
Okay, great, thank you. Any questions or comments from the board? Go ahead.
Yeah, I would just say I'm really happy to see this and want to thank the staff, all the staff that have been, sort of working to get this to this point. Thank you.
Agreed. Thank you. And I just had one quick clarification question. As you know, we receive all of the emails and comments from the public, and recently today I saw a bunch of some community comments, particularly in Charlestown around the Navy Yard, related to this text amendment. So I just want to make sure that this is totally separate, right, from the text amendment versus deciding anything about an individual project.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'm happy to address the Constitution Inn project in Charlestown, which involves the renovation of a former hotel situated on an urban renewal parcel that proposes a 100% affordable housing project. Presently, the project has the potential to seek a waiver under Article 80, how the code is currently written, which the development team has actually had requested that of the agency. We had, in response to community input, have asked that team to go through a full Article 80 process, which they are currently under review for. So tonight's agenda item in front of you is really just for the actual change to the text amendment and not an actual waiver for any project.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the board? Hearing and seeing none, a motion is in order.
So moved. Second.
Roll call for a vote. Ms. Bennett?
Aye.
Mr. Landsmark?
Aye.
Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Good luck with all that. We appreciate you and your work.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair.
Okay, item number, switch screens here. Where are we at? Item number 5. Request authorization to sign the lease agreements for building number 79 and building number 96 in the Charlestown Navy Yard from Alexandria Real Estate Equities Incorporated to the East Cambridge Company, LLC. Dennis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Buildings 79 and 96 are located adjacent to the Rope Walk building in the historic monument area in the Charlestown Navy Yard. These abutting buildings total approximately 25,000 square feet combined. They've been leased to Alexandria Real Estate Equities since 1997. Alexandria has successfully operated both properties as office investment properties, and have most recently been leased to the Spalding Rehab Hospital and the MGH Institute of Health Professionals, have been long-term tenants of those buildings. Both of those subleases expired in 2022, and the buildings are currently vacant. Alexandria intends to sell the leases for each building to the East Cambridge Company. The East Cambridge Company was founded 5 years ago, and they currently own 8 buildings in East Cambridge. They have successfully converted 1 building into lab and are in the process of converting 2 additional buildings into lab. East Cambridge Company is in the due diligence stage now to investigate the conversion of the buildings we're talking about today, 79 and 96, into lab as well. Each lease referred to today has only 30 years remaining on the term. BPDA and East Cambridge Company have been, we've commenced initial negotiations toward extending the term of the leases at the current market rates. However, the current volatility of the life science real estate market is well documented. There's currently 12% vacancy in Boston, over 5 million square feet are on the market, 40% of which are from subleases. So until the life science market corrects itself and the prices stabilize, it's very difficult to know the precise rent to demand for an extension of those leases. Both BPDA and East Cambridge want to be thoughtful and deliberate in negotiations to reflect both the current economic conditions as well as mutually beneficial lease terms for when the market eventually stabilizes. In anticipation of successful negotiations with BPDA, and I share that anticipation, East Cambridge Company is pursuing the purchase of the buildings and the leases in their as-is condition without requesting any additional years on the rental concessions, or rental concessions rather. So East Cambridge Company will be responsible to pay to BPDA under the terms of the existing leases until such time that a new lease is negotiated. I do anticipate returning to this board in early 2024 with a new lease proposal for consideration. In the meantime, today I am only asking that BPDA board consent to the assignment of the leases for both buildings 79 and 96 from Alexandria Real Estate Equities to the East Cambridge Company under the terms and conditions of the existing leases. And I look forward to returning in very early 2024.
Thank you. Thank you. Do we have any questions or comments from the board on this? Hearing and seeing none, a motion is in order.
So moved. Second.
We'll call for a vote. Ms. Bennett?
Aye.
Mr. Landsmark?
Aye.
Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thanks, Dennis.
Thank you.
All right, and last agenda item, it's a short one. Agenda item number 6, Director's Update. Director Jemison, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Chair Ross, and good evening. I want to thank you and the board for your help tonight. We have a very large agenda that's coming to the board in December, so we appreciate you taking the time, additional time, in support of the board's agenda to be here tonight. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay? Great. So tonight we had 2 development projects, about 229 residential units, 41 of which were income restricted with a developer's cost estimate of $145 million. These projects represent 427,000 square feet of development and will put 352 tradespeople to work as part of their completion. So that's a quick summary of what we did. It's my real personal pleasure to welcome Kate Bennett to the board. Kate, you were appointed by Mayor Wu just a few months ago. You've worked in affordable housing, development policy and planning for more than 25 years, with a particular focus on public housing revitalization as head of the BHA. You recently spearheaded $2 billion of redevelopment activity there, and there's even development currently underway at BHA sites that's really the result of your hard work. You've been instrumental in the development of BHA's green healthy housing, sustainability programs, and the expansion of resident empowerment and self-sufficiency initiatives. On behalf of the agency, we look forward to working with you on the initiatives and projects that are going to come before this board. On a personal note, I'm thrilled to have you. You're a leader in public and affordable housing, and having you on the board is a real honor, joining a great board full of great leaders.
Thank you.
It's a real pleasure. Also wanted to share thanks to the board for advancing new market zoning, untabling that item today. Approving those amendments is going to allow us to take key steps in the new market area as a result of Plan New Market, taking zoning to the board. This will be the third, and there'll be a few more this month and next month, effort to take plans to zoning and advance them to the Zoning Commission, really putting in place predictable elements that are going to create predictable and appropriate growth in that neighborhood. This plan prioritizes preservation and production of new ground floor spaces that are going to serve New Market's traditional uses, specifically uses such as production and manufacturing, distribution, repair, and the creative economy. These text amendments are going to implement these recommendations into the zoning code. The changes will now have to go before the zoning commission for final approval. I want to thank the staff for their hard work on advancing this plan. As I said, it's part of a larger initiative to make sure that we're advancing plans all the way through to the zoning commission. I also want to thank you for your vote and your attention to the affordable housing waiver, which was one of the last votes. You approved a zoning amendment which will allow the agency to waive Article 80 for certain affordable projects, which is going to serve the greater good very broadly, making it simpler for important affordable housing developments to be approved, reducing costs, reducing time. The waiver applies if a proposed housing project doesn't cause significant adverse effects beyond its site and meets specific criteria. This waiver will allow more affordable housing to be built more quickly and, of course, support some of the city's more important goals. I want to thank those who've worked on this zoning as well as the community for their input. I want to reiterate that does not mean the community will not have a say in these projects and that all waiver requests will be reviewed thoroughly and brought forth to this board for consideration. Finally, tonight I wanted to highlight something we don't normally get to do, which is to approve a new museum. This new Holocaust Museum will create a new educational center and museum about the Holocaust right in downtown Boston on Tremont Street. As an important cultural and educational tool, it will preserve the memory of the Holocaust and teach its lessons to future generations. The museum is planned to open by 2026, and I look forward to watching it take shape in the years to come. With that, I also want to say thanks for your vote on 15 Washington Street, among other actions you took tonight. Thank you very much for your time. I pass it back to you, Chair Rojas, and I appreciate your forbearance as we complete this meeting and head to one more for the end of the year.
That's good. Thank you, Chief Jemison. Okay, so that was our last agenda item, and I need a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Seconds.
Roll call for a vote. Ms. Bennett?
Aye.
Dr. Landsmark?
Aye.
Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Meeting adjourned. We'll see you next week, everyone. Bye.